Hello, I'm Master Nf3 Nc6, and today I would like to have a look at a recent game, a surprising game, because it's an appearance by none other than Magnus Carlsen, who over the weekend played in the Norwegian league, which is quite surprising. Right now they are fighting for the right to challenge him for the title of world champion. Aronian, Anand, Kramnik, etc. battling it out. So meanwhile, Magnus Carlsen has been sitting on the sidelines, watching the candidates, doing some interviews, doing some YouTube stuff, and well, he also did an AMA on Reddit, where he, for instance, had a surprising jab at Nakamura, but I think that was all in good humor. But yeah, I say surprising because, well, at this level, players aren't playing that much in leagues. I would say the German Bundesliga would be an exception, where well, some of the strongest have been playing for years, like Anand and players like him. And all the more surprising because he was playing in the second league in the Norwegian league for a club from, I think, Stavanger, I believe. So I'm presuming that that's where he's from, in Norway. And, well, he secured the club promotion to the first league. And in this game he played against a Grandmaster Vladimir Georgiev from Macedonia. A strong Grandmaster, rated about 25-50. And I believe he has been the second of Antonetta Stefanova. And I think he was her second when she became female world champion. So a strong player who has been around for a while, but I'm sure he wasn't expecting to face such a tough and prestigious opponent in the second league in Norway. But that's what happened. He played black against Magnus Carlsen. And Magnus, who can play, well, more or less anything, opened with e4, e5, Nf3 Nc6, and here Magnus went for the most common, Bishop B5, the Rui Lopez, which is one of the oldest openings around, but Magnus has played many things here. He even played c3 once, Ponciani, I think, against Hari Krishna. I think it was in Nikanshe, but I remember it could be off. So, okay, Georgiev went for a6 here, but most recently the elite has been playing knight f6, the Berlin, which arises after castles. Knight takes e4, d4, knight d6, takes on c6, takes on e5, and we exchange the queens. And, well, in my opinion, this is a position and an opening that is misunderstood a little bit. Okay, it's an ending, but still people play this with black if they want to win. And for instance, Magnus Carlsen has played this himself. He played it in an Olympiad. Well, he's played it many times, but he played it in an Olympiad against a Austrian rated, I think, around 2400. And you can bet your ass that Magnus Carlsen wanted to win that game, so he didn't play it for a draw. There are some imbalances in the position, and then black has the bishop pair. In some instances, he can pressure the pawns here, and it suits Magnus' style. He transfers the weight of the struggle to the middle game or the end game. But okay, that's a different story. Berlin, and black has been doing so well with the Berlin that people have started to play d3 here as well to just to get a playable game. And black will play something like bishop c5, and I think we saw, yeah, some games in the candidates with the d3 move. Aronian winning a nice game with black, I believe. But Georgiev played a6, and after the most common moves here, castles, Georgiev played b5. Black can take on e4, that's the open Spanish. We can also play bishop e7, which is the main line. Bishop e7, rook e1, b5, bishop b3. And black can play d6 or castle. And for instance here, d6 is the most common, but d5 is the martial attack, which many people like, and was very popular for a while, but people tend to avoid it with white, play something that people call the anti-marshal with like early A4 or something like that. You know, not giving black the opportunity to play the marshal, which tends to have a drawish reputation these days. But okay, Georgiev went B5, and now we have the Archangel variation. Some people call it the Archangel, but it was invented by people from Arkhangelsk in Russia, I believe. And well, black sacrifices some development to fianchetto his bishop on B7, where it will later put some pressure on the white center, is what black is hoping. So Magnus played D3, bishop C5, and C3. And I think already around here we are entering territory, according to my database, then A4 is the first new move, but I haven't updated it for like over a year, so could be some games in this variation. But it should be mentioned that if you go back to the 7th move, D3, that there are plenty of games with Georgiev in the database where he plays bishop E7. Among them, a game against Caruana, Fabiano Caruana, one of the best players in the world from the Olympiad, and Caruana won there with the white pieces. So perhaps Georgiev was fearing some preparation by Magnus, so he went with bishop C5 instead. So okay, A4, black plays D5, and usually if you can accomplish this with black, then you're close to solving your problems in the open. Magnus took on B5, and then we exchange some pieces, rook takes, bishop takes. You know, at times you would like to take with the queen to increase the pressure on diagonal, but you have problems with the D5 pawn immediately if you do that. So we don't have time to take with the queen, so bishop takes, e takes, and knight takes. And after rook e1, black went b4. And we could say that white really doesn't have much in this position. We should mention that I didn't really consider it before starting this video, but I'm guessing if white takes on e5, black has some kind of tactic, like taking on f2, perhaps. This seems to work. Queen f6 check, and pick off the rook. So probably the pawn on e5 is poisoned. So Magnus played queen c2, and now black prevented white from taking on e5 with f6. Queen c2, we see now that if white to move, he can take on e5, and if the same variation, we take on f2 with the queen, so there's no more check. So therefore f6 to protect the pawn. And this position is a typical Magnus position. He didn't get much from the opening. We're just entering a middle game, and black shouldn't really have any problems. I mean, he's castled, his bishops are fine, and meanwhile white doesn't have any pawns, you know, further than the third rank right here, and still the knight is undeveloped. So typical Magnus position where he, you know, he wants to outplay his opponent at a later stage in the game. And knight bt2, developing a nice piece, king h8, and knight e4. So now we drastically improved this piece from b1 to e4, and with tempo, so the bishop must move, bishop e7. And let's see. I think I got unplugged here, just a moment. There, hopefully it's fair. So h3 was played. And I believe the critical move here is maybe d4, but still Magnus just plays a useful move. h3. Just giving luft to the king. I mean, it's not a problem in the immediate future, but you know, strong players like to do that. Just improve your position slightly, give luft to the king, You don't have to worry about it at a later stage. And also, now black must make a move and come up with something. And here you went knight a5. Okay, we don't want black taking this bishop, because then he will have the bishop pair. And we have some issues to deal with our pawns, and this bishop will be a tremendous piece on the diagonal. So we want to preserve this bishop. And here is maybe the first critical stage of the game, where black decides to sacrifice a pawn. In my opinion, I mean, black shouldn't have any problems here if you could just place a move like c5, something like this. It's true he does have some holes here in the pawn structure. I mean, white already has a knight on e4. We could imagine a knight on f5 at some point. We could imagine a knight on c4. But still, I mean, he's not down anything, and he's got a small space advantage, and his pieces can be improved, so no reason why he should be worse at all, really. But here he played b3. And the idea is simply to get the bishop pair, but he's sacrificing a pawn for it. So Magnus is forced to take on b3, knight takes and queen takes. And quite often in modern chess we see, and it's also a common theme in the martial attack, where black gets the bishop pair but gives up a pawn, but his chances of drawing are excellent because the bishop pair is so strong in open positions that often it's just worth being down a pawn. So let's see what happened. Knight b6, attacking this pawn. So Magnus simply advanced the pawn, pawn d4. And now something started to happen. Black played f5, trying to increase the scope of his pieces, perhaps trying to attack a little bit, play e4. Magnus went knight c5, now we're threatening knight e6, so black went bishop d5. Now knight e6 will lose a piece because they take on b3, of course, so the queen moved, queen d1, and now e4. And if we have to retreat the knight, then black will have a dangerous initiative with the strong bishops, so the knight went forward, knight e5, bishop d6, and bishop f4. So Magnus is down a pawn, up a pawn, sorry, but black has the bishop pair. But it's not immediately apparent. I mean, it doesn't look really active, you know, everything is closed up at the moment. But still, white has to make some progress, and that's perhaps not so easy. Georgiev went for further exchanges here with knight into c4. Magnus played b4. And here Georgiev became a little ambitious with g5, which might be another critical point of the game. If he just stays solid, maybe he can better defend the position, but he went with g5. Bishop back to h2 and f4. And, well, to be honest, this looks quite okay, and this is something that most people would certainly do in a blitz game. Even though we open up the king, it's not apparent how white can take advantage of it and attack it, so black should be fine. Knight takes c4, and bishop takes c5. If bishop takes c4, then we take on e4, and now we're up 2 pawns. True, black still has some compensation, but still something similar happened in the game. After bishop takes c5, knight d2, bishop d6, and knight takes e4. And yeah, the only difference is that in the other variation the bishop was on c4, but here it's actually on, let's see, back to the game. Bishop takes c5, knight d2, here it's on d5. So a slight difference. Of course, black would rather have it on d5 than on c4, where it's more active, and this diagonal is much more important than the other one. So okay, queen e7 was played. Perhaps black should play here rook e8. And the idea is to try and exchange rooks, because once we do that, let's say something like this. I think this should be okay. I mean, then maybe we're closer to a draw with black. If we can exchange queens, maybe it's possible to draw the ending. But still, white is up 2 pawns, so maybe he has some winning chances. But the opposite colored bishops always represent some risk of a draw. And here also the white bishop is quite inactive because of these pawns, so he needs to activate it somehow. But instead he went queen e7, did not exchange rooks, and after knight takes d6 he had to take with the queen. And now the white rook is also a bit active with rook e5, which is another point to consider why black should have gone for the exchange of rooks. Because now the white rook becomes active, rook e5, forcing h6, and now h4. And now we're forcing black to weaken this strong pawn formation that he had here earlier. With just trying to take on g5. And if he takes on h4, then this pawn is all of a sudden weakened, and we can maybe win it in some lines. Magnus won queen h5, attacking this. Bishop here on d5, so black played c6. You know, at first glance, one would be worried about the back rank, but it's not so easy for black to put any pieces on the back rank. And you know, let's say, for instance, I haven't really checked it, but something like this. Okay, first of all, we could play rook e1 when this is attacked, this is attacked. Maybe we can take on f4, something like this. When after this we can take with the rook here. And the problem with checking is that now this is loose, and once we start checking, this is hanging also. Once we start checking with white, you know, when you have an open king and 2 heavy pieces can start checking you, then you're most likely going to get checkmated. And trying to let's see, go back to the game, c6, and white played f3. And the other problem is once you start trying to check with the rook, which actually happened in the game after b5, black went rook a8, then white can simply exchange this rook now with rook to e8 check. And here things have changed significantly from when we wanted to get the ending earlier, because this has been weakened, so the pawns are going to drop off. After king h7, queen d7, another problem arises after this pawn pushed to b5. If you go back, white pushed b5 here. Black can't take it because the bishop will hang. So going back to the game after queen d7, king h8, the presence of this pawn now decides the game, because after b6, black had to resign because there's no way to stop his pawn really. And he can't even play c5 to sacrifice a pawn, because then this guy will hang. And meanwhile, white is fine on the back rank. If black tries to activate the queen, then, well, he has to leave this pawn, so we can just take the pawn. And, you know, to add insult to injury, the king isn't really that great for black, so a hopeless situation, and he had to resign. So nothing spectacular, but typical Magnus game, where he didn't seem to make any mistakes, and he just kept small positional pressure throughout the game, and slowly but surely increased his advantage. And in the end, black just couldn't handle the pressure and had to succumb. But nothing to be ashamed of, and some of the strongest players in the world have done exactly that against Magnus, and will continue to do so for hopefully the foreseeable future. We'll see, but yeah, I just wanted to look at this game and present it to you, because, well, Magnus isn't playing much these days, so nice to see a game from him. And yeah, back to the candidates, and let's see who gets to challenge Magnus. So hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you later. Bye bye.